Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome back and welcome to our last session today, last session for this particular two-day programme on this platform. We are going to be doing more going forward, so keep your eye out for that. But yeah, for this last session, I'm delighted that Andy Clark from Practice Building has come back to give us a session here talking about celebrating the managers. Before we say hello to Andy again, I just wanted to show you that you can connect with Practice Building on this platform and try and get a meeting with Andy or his team. I know he's busy this afternoon, but I'm sure there's some slots left there if you want to try and meet the team and have a chat with them there, or onwards from there as well. I think there's loads of material on there on all of these profiles as well, like handouts and documents. So well worth a check it out. So hi Andy, welcome back, and yeah, we're celebrating the managers. So I'm gonna hand over to you.
Thank you very much. I have to address a question that was asked me after the presentation this morning. It was, Andy, what tea are you drinking today? As you know, Practice Building, we're into our tea. So today's tea is a Darjeeling Macabari with just a hint of Lapsang Souchong, and it's rather good. So cheers. This afternoon, we're celebrating the managers, the unsung heroes of great practices. I think it's something, it's time. It's time we talked about the brilliant job that managers do. And also we should look at what their role actually could be. So let's wander on. The role of the manager then. There are 4 jobs in any practice, and you have to decide which jobs you're doing and which jobs somebody else is doing, but they all have to be done. The first jobs are the team jobs. The team jobs are the customer-facing, patient-facing jobs, and they're the admin that the team can do. And they are at the bulk of the effort in any enterprise. So optometrists, you're in team. Dispensing opticians, you're in team. Receptionists, you're in team. Admin people, you're in team. Lab technicians, you're in team. Some of those people in the team also move on to the next level, which is manager. The manager's job is not to do the jobs that the team are doing. The manager's job is to organize the team so all the jobs are done properly, done the way that they should be done when they should be done without too much prompting. So the manager is the organizer, sometimes known as the herder of cats. They're the person who makes sure that the team are all doing what they should be doing, when they should be doing it, in the way it should be done, and they're absolutely essential. The next role is leader. The leaders set direction. They look at strategy. They say, this is the way the business is. This is where it's going to be. This is how we're going to get there. And the other thing that a leader does is create the culture. The culture in an organization, even if it's only of 3 people, is determined by the ethos of the leader. So the leader supports the manager support the team support the customers, patients. And finally, we have the owner. The owner is the person who looks after the finances, makes sure that the business is well funded, and also makes sure that it's delivering the appropriate returns on investment. You can see then that the owner might only need to work part-time in a practice, whereas the team, of course, are working full-time in the practice. It may well be in a small team that an individual person works in team, manager, leader, and owner. What we have to do is make sure that when we move out of team, we are ready to do the job, to be managers, leaders, and owners. And that's what we're going to be chatting about today, because if we don't, you end up with this. You can end up with a management gap, where you get an idea from leadership of where it wants to go, but it's not translated properly to the team, so the team don't follow on. Signs and symptoms of management gaps then. System slippage. People know how they should be doing things, but they don't. Staff not pulling their weight. That sounds a bit mean, but no, without a manager, people will tend to do what is easy, fun, and avoid things that are difficult, and maybe not doing the things that really should be done in the way they should be done when they should be done, doing them. Underutilized talent. Managers, one of the roles of a manager is to spot great talent in somebody and let that person become brilliant at what they're innately good at. If they're really good at talking to people, well, give them a job where they talk to lots of people. Don't make them do the filing. On the other hand, you'll get somebody who's absolutely ninja at computer input and checking things. Well, don't make them go out and talk to all the patients. So managers recognize and utilize talent properly. Another sign of the management gap is inconsistent customer experience. a bad manager, somebody who isn't doing the job right, they says, oh yes, we do great service, but their customer service manual is try and be nice, Sheila. Whereas consistent customer service is systematized, automated, and is managed properly by somebody. Another sign that you maybe have got a management gap, you're repeating silly mistakes, or the team keep making the same silly mistake again and again because people aren't providing correction and control over it. And one of the ultimate signs, of course, is poor business performance. So there are two types of managers that we've seen. And I offer you a quiz almost to see which one you might be. There's a manager with a capital M, known fondly here at Practice Building for the people on our program as Big M managers. It's got a capital M at the start of the word manager. I am a manager with a big M. It's a title. A big M manager is a person who organizes people and things to achieve a particular objective. And then you get small M managers. Manager with a small m, I'm managing, I manage, I cope, I survive, I get by through adversity. So big M managers, they're in charge, they make things happen. Little m managers cope and struggle by. And I thought it would be interesting to compare a few of the aspects of management and see how the two change. So in terms of time then, the biggest excuse, Hales, we call them Hales, hairy arse lame excuses. The big excuse for poor managers is I don't have enough time. Little M managers say I never had time to do that properly. A big M manager realizes that there's no such thing as not enough time. There's only lack of priorities. And they understand what needs to be prioritized higher than something else, so that the things that don't get done are the things where it matters least because they're the lowest priority. So time management then, we've all got the same amount of hours in any day, in any week, any year, any lifetime. But big M managers make the most of that time by prioritizing properly and do the things that should and must be done, as opposed to the things that could be done and are easy and familiar. Something that came up, I was chatting to somebody else this morning, and I thought, I'll put this slide in. A big M manager actively fills an appointment book to make sure that the business is always busy. A little M manager does the recall when they've got time to do it, and they send out a load of letters and the book doesn't fill up and they go, well, I sent the recall out, don't know what else to do. A big M manager understands how to fill an appointment book, has appointment book first aid. They are professionals. They understand that without the book full, there's not a great deal we can do, so they fill it. In terms of systems, big M managers are systems fanatics. They understand that if something must be done the right way, and that's the way as defined by your business, your practice, not the way they did it when they worked at Boots or Vision Express or anywhere else, but the way your practice does it, it must be defined. So big M managers are systems fanatics, whereas little M managers are systems faffers. They don't really create systems. They try and say, oh yeah, we need to do that. I've had a meeting about it. Of course, if you have a meeting and tell the staff to do something, they probably won't. But if you have a system and you train people to use a system, they probably will. So big M managers understand that at the heart and soul of great management lies great systems, and they become systems fanatics. Big M managers look on sale in the way that a human being looks at oxygen. It's not necessarily, sales are not necessarily the most exciting thing on the planet, but if you don't get it right, you run out and then you're in trouble. Little M managers think the whole thing's a little bit sleazy and they're not quite comfy with sales, so they kind of dodge it a little bit, and they use lazy excuses like it's unprofessional to sell, which is absolutely completely wrong, by the way. We did a survey where we talked to patients, and the people who sold the most elegantly were also judged the most professional, because sales is all about educating people about the choices that they've got and then asking them what they'd like to do. Big M managers get this. So they're proud of sales. They understand it's part of their job. And the more sales they do, the more they are fulfilling the needs and wants and likes of their patients. Big M managers plan profit. Little M managers are puzzled by profit. Profit is something that the boss talks about every now and again, usually when the accountants had a sweaty, scared phone call about every 18 months with them. And profit is something that other people do. Whereas a big M manager works with the boss to create a plan for profit and say, well, if we are to generate this profit and thereby make our business secure, these are the numbers that have to drive that. And they become very comfortable with the idea of profit. They become very knowledgeable about profit. They understand the systems that are required to generate profit, those being new patient acquisition, recall, database marketing, customer experience, sales, gross profit, and net profit. And they become masters of those 7 systems so that they can make sure that the practice is delivering the profit that it should. KPIs, key performance indicators. Big M managers love KPIs, key performance indicators, because they are a measure of how well they're doing their job. Little M managers hate KPIs, key performance indicators, because they're a measure of how well they're doing their job. Now, here's the big distinction with KPIs, and it's very important that as an owner or a leader or a manager, never, ever, ever give somebody a key performance indicator, a number that they should strive to achieve, without also training and developing them in the mastery of a system that will deliver it. And this is one of the tests that we often look for managers. If they set KPIs for their team, they never say to somebody, this number's wrong, go sort yourself out, without saying, and if you do it this way, this is the number that you will achieve. So say, for example, if we were to look at something as ubiquitous in KPIs as conversion rates, possibly an outdated measure now, but a conversion rate. If you were to say to somebody, your conversion rate's really, really poor, go fix it, you'd be working a little M. If you were to say to somebody, your conversion rate's really poor, but Barry here, working just in the same building as you, is achieving this. This is what Barry does. This is the system that Barry uses. Let's train you to use Barry's system. It would be reasonable then to ask people to aspire to Barry's level. Bosses, remember, you can never expect your team to outperform you on KPIs. You must set the benchmark for this. If not, you're saying, I don't have a system to get it right. Wandering on. Given 2 different managers, the same group of people, big M managers would probably create a terrific team. And little M managers would create a terrible team. The difference is that the big M managers realize that their job is to create outstanding results, or extraordinary results rather, from ordinary people. Terrible teams come from poor management most of the time. Now management of course starts with recruitment. So small M managers don't know how to recruit, so they recruit the wrong people. They then don't train and develop them. They don't motivate them. They don't give them enough feedback. They don't create a culture when people work together and help each other. Big M managers, on the other hand, appreciate how they can recruit the right people for the job. They appreciate that the first 90 days in a job is the most important 90 days of somebody's career in that business. And they make sure that the new applicant gets through the 90 days learning what they need to learn in order to excel at their job. The terrible managers don't do that. They give people a job and then hope that they pick it up along the way. In terms of meetings or team meetings, big M managers, their meetings are motivating. And little M managers, their meetings are moaning. They're moan fests. The difference here, well, first off, we should look at the frequency of meetings. Big M managers have more meetings than little M managers, but they're brief and they're energized and they're to the point. A big M manager would start and end the day, we call it bracketing the day, with 5 minutes for the team. And if you predict what a day is likely to be like, there's more chance that it will turn out that way than if you don't. At the end of the day, the big M manager will wrap up the day with another meeting to say, well done, and who should I be congratulating? Who should I be saying thank you to? What have we learned today? And for next time, what should we do differently? A little M manager at the end of the day just thinks, thank God that's over, and I'm getting out of here with everybody else. So the key to making a motivating weekly meeting is to make sure that you invite and require people to join in. So instead of leading with statements, this is going wrong, that's going wrong, the other's going wrong, I'm quite happy about this, a big M manager makes people responsible for areas, or accountable at least for areas of the business, and asks them to report and tell them what's going on. So in my practices, we had optoms who used to report, we had DOs who used to report, the lab used to report, and so on. I used to have to do my report for my team, say this is what I've been working on each week. And the meeting would be open for questions and input, and in so doing, you create a vibrant, ongoing conversation. Whereas Little M managers have meetings where they think, well, if I bribe them with a croissant, at least they'll stay in the room. And then people sit in the room and they stare at their shoes, munching a croissant and not making any sound. And when the manager stops moaning, you could hear a pin drop. But the staff are thinking, well, at least it'll be over, and it's slightly better than having to work. So one of the keys to great management is great meetings, motivational meetings. Great managers apply ongoing training and development to their team. Little M managers think that training seems to work by osmosis. If you stand close enough to somebody who knows what it's doing, somehow or other it'll leach through the skin of one through into the other, and then they'll know it. The way a big M manager creates training is to think of all the things that somebody may need to learn over the time that they're in the business. And they put one of them down on a post-it note, and then they put another one down on a post-it note, and they keep doing it until they've probably got 100 post-it notes. And then they look at all these post-it notes and they go, if somebody was a new starter and new to optics, which of these would I teach them first? And they take that and they put it on the left-hand side. And then they say, what would be the last thing they'd learn? And they put that on the right-hand side. And then they stack up all the rest in sequence between the two. Sometimes it drifts off into branches. But in the end, you have a post-it note for all the training interventions. How to cash up, how to answer the phone, how to do frame stocks, etc., etc. And that training program might take 2 or 3 years to complete with somebody. For every one of those post-it notes, you then create a system being a combination of a standard and a system to deliver it, and you start training people. Now, if you were to show this to a job applicant and say, here's our training plan. Over the next X weeks, we'll be training you in these things in this order, and this is how we'll do it. By the end of it, you'll have mastered all of these different tasks. I guarantee you will get better quality applicants and better quality employees than if you don't. One of the biggest reasons why some independent practices struggle to recruit great staff, and some multiples find it very easy, is because the multiples have better training and development plans than independents do. But it's not hard to create a really good training program and deliver ongoing training to your team. Particularly, the manager doesn't have to do it all. They just have to make sure it's happening. Reviews. Big M managers review regularly. Small M managers do it reluctantly, rarely, if ever. Oh yeah, we do appraisals, but I hate doing them, and so they keep, oh yeah, I know we should do them every year, but I don't. It's been 3 years since we did it. Nobody likes them. Of course they don't, because you only do it every year or so, and then it just turns into another whinge fest. Reviewing regularly is totally different. Reviewing regularly starts with an agreement that the company will look after the people who look after the company. So if you understand how your staff benefit by working with you, by being part of your team, and you understand what drives and motivates them to work with you, you can deliver more of that. And you promise that you will deliver more of that, providing they do the things that you need from them. So the company looks after the people who look after the company. You create a review system for that. And instead of having to do appraisals where you talk to everybody in a short space of time once every 6 years, and 6 months, and everybody's sick of it. Well, if you've got a team of 6 people, do 1 review a week. This is what big M managers do. They do 1 review a week, so that in 6 weeks' time, every member of staff gets a good sit-down chat with the boss. And the conversation is, the member of staff says, this is what I love about here. This is what's frustrating me. Could we try this instead? Here's a great idea. Oh, and by the way, Sarah's doing a fantastic job. Why don't you say thank you to her? And then the manager says, well, this is what I think of what you're doing, and I love this and I love that, and I'd love you to go to work on this. So you have a grown-up adult conversation on a regular basis. A big M manager would take an hour a week to do 1 of those every week. If they've got a team of 6, every 6 weeks the person gets a chat. Whereas the little M managers, they review infrequently. The relationship with the boss is really, really important too. A big M manager sees the boss as the leader. And together, the two of them become a stunningly good senior management team. Manager's job isn't to create leadership. Manager's job and strategy. The manager's job is to implement leadership and strategy. but also to be a really good sounding board for the leader, the one who's saying, well, this is where the business is going to go. And the manager also appreciates that the ethos of the leader is going to be transmitted via the manager down to the rest of the team. So if we want an enthusiastic, keen, vibrant team, we have to have an enthusiastic, keen, vibrant manager who has to have an enthusiastic, keen, vibrant boss. Put those together and you'll get a fantastic team. And here is the big crunch for the little M managers. In my experience, everybody who has become a little M manager has a boss that's too busy to lead because they're spending too long in team and they're not spending time with their manager. They're not developing their manager. They're not sharing information and creating new ideas and strategies and tactics together. They're not working as a team. The boss is too busy in the team, usually looking after patients, customers, clients, cool, and what you like. So if you want a great manager, bosses, you have to become a great boss. You have to become a great leader. You then have to recruit the manager who will be your team member at the senior management team level, who will make sure that the team are doing things the way you like them done, the way they should be done, the way that creates your magnificent point of difference from all the other options your patients have got, the one that creates the magnificent point of difference that says you're the best place to work for in your town too. So if I were to think of all the success factors that are true in our clients, the biggest and most successful, most profitable, most secure, happiest practices only have one thing in common. And that's they've all got stunningly good managers, because in truth, the managers are the glue that holds great practices together. I've blasted at it now. I'm just slightly running out of time, so I'm going to have to shut up in a second. If you'd like to talk to me more about it, let's talk about it. The Big M program is the program that we run. It's a 12-month program for managers. And you can ask me more about it if you go to www.callpbandy.uk. At this point, Nathan, let's go back to some questions. He says, fingers crossed, that somebody's actually there and has a good question to ask.
Hi, Andy. Yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much for that. And first question probably come from my team. Is how often should I be reviewing them?
Should you be reviewing your team? Absolutely, you should, on a regular basis, and I will teach you to rolling review.
Rolling review. That was my question. Actually, is how often would you say a rolling review is good practice? How often would that be?
It depends a little bit. If you've got a really great performing member of team, I think it's a respectful thing to do to have a good chat with them every 6 weeks or so. If somebody is moving towards special measures and underperforming, well, then you should talk to them appropriately more frequently than that. But I don't think you should ever let somebody go longer than 6 weeks without you saying, I love what you're doing. Thank you. Well done. Now, give me your good ideas. Let's spend an hour working on your role in my business. And I found that 6 weeks is the optimum time.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay. And then on the training front, I mean, what in the optical industry, what's your sort of perception? Do you think that it's one that's good at training, or perhaps not so good, or just average? Where does it sit?
There's a whole spectrum, Nathan. There are some practices that hardly do any training at all, and they rely on a training by getting a rep in to teach about the latest frames or lenses. And then there are others who have really elegant, beautifully crafted training programs that may be 2 or 3 years in duration, and they're constantly developing and growing people. There are some people we meet who say, I don't train my team because then they might get good and leave, which I think is hilarious, because what's the opposite? They stay rubbish and stay. The fact is that if you've got a properly evolving team and you're developing it, people will ping out of the top of it from time to time, but more people will be brought underneath. And one of the signs of a very stagnant team is 20 years without any staff turnover.
Yeah. So, I totally agree. Sorry, I was just trying to see if there's any more questions on there. We did do a quick poll while you were talking there.
Oh, really? Right.
I just put on there, how often do you get training as a manager, or do you give training for your managers? So it was kind of a two-way question. So 38% of people said once a month, and then 26% between 2 and 4 months, 25% over 6 months, and 13% never. So yeah, I don't know if that surprises you.
It doesn't. I think it's terrible that managing a business, and particularly an optical practice, is as big a skill as testing eyes. you need to be as talented and as skilled to do it properly, and yet most people have precious little training and development in management in optics. In independent optics, there are I can think of at least one training program for managers that is pretty good inside the multiples. But in independent sectors, in the small groups, training is very few and far between. It goes something like, what's my job description? Well, do all the jobs I don't want to do. That's the training program for too many managers. They need to be helped. They need to be supported because there's an awful lot to it. So yes, I'm afraid it is a bit of a soapbox of mine, and I love the Big M program for that reason. We work with people every week to teach them to be managers.
Cool. Okay. Got a question from Chris here. It says, how would you recommend making time for team building during COVID, as we're all so very busy?
How would I? It's quite simple. Cancel an appointment. It's down to priorities. You have to decide what's most important. If you were to invest the time it took you to do one appointment a week, and you spent that on proper team development, your business would be so much more profitable during all the other appointment slots, and all the other jobs would get done. You have to look at it as an investment, not a cost. So it doesn't cost you an appointment. It generates the ability to work even better with your with the patients who do come through the door and the ones that you see. Mm-hmm. Just prioritize.
Yeah, and another one here as well. So thanks for that, Andy. I'm an optometrist and not a manager, therefore. So this is just something else about the poll. How do you motivate a team to stay late and come in early for team building and education? That's a really good question. I guess potentially you're asking them to give a bit of their own time.
I think first off, you have to really ask the question: why should you? If people are the nature of employment is that people are exchanging their time for money. Full stop. That's why Nathan does his job. It's why I do my job. It's one of the reasons we all go to work. Nathan and I both have something else in common. We love what we do, so we don't mind, but neither of us would work for free. So the first thing is, what are you actually saying to somebody if you say, come on in before, and I'm not going to pay you for it, or stay late, and I'm not going to pay you for it? You're saying this isn't worth being paid for. So first off, if you're not paying people to do it, think about whether you really should, because you're asking them to give something to that. Now, lots of owners find this concept to be anathema, because people like me who own businesses, we work 24/7. We go to bed thinking about it. We wake up in the morning thinking about it. It's because it's what we do. That's because we're owners. Employees don't. That's the nature of employment. So assuming that you're not going to ask them to work for free, then you have to say to them, tell them why it's important. If you can create a cause that they will rally around, they think this is valuable, this is important, I will do it. Well, then they will turn up early and they will stay late. If you give more than you demand, they will give back. If you're a net taker from your staff, where you demand them to do lots and lots and lots and lots of things, you pay them minimum wage, you don't invest in them, and then you ask them to work late, they're going to say no. And this is where the win-win argument is so strong that sits inside rolling reviews, that the company looks after the people who look after the company. It's give and take. If you're getting pushback and you're asking your staff to do things, you're getting pushback, it's probably that you're demanding more than you're giving. Mm. And it's a two-way street.
And do you think, following on from that, do you think the pandemic has changed how people think about work as well? Because,
how long have you got?
Yeah.
Absolutely, it has, for lots and lots of reasons. And I think to start with, at least, we saw people rallying around a cause. They wanted to look after their practices that they worked in, and it was heartwarming to see that under that sort of duress, people rallied together. Now we're starting to see what, I hate the phrase the new normal, but there is a new normal arriving, and people are going to be thinking, well, what's in it for me? I think we're going to see a very, very volatile workforce in the next few years, with lots of people changing jobs, lots of people jumping from one profession to another, because the rules of engagement have changed. It's a fantastic opportunity for the people who see it and the people who get it, and it's going to be catastrophic for the people who don't. That's the short answer. I could go on for hours if you wanted.
Yeah, well, I think it's a good probably point to close on, because I think, you know, from an outsider, because I'm an events and media person rather than an optical practice owner or anything like that. But the optical sector's probably got a lot going for it, hasn't it? In terms
Absolutely.
of being interesting for people to get a job. It's a safe environment to work in. It's got long-term demand and things like that. So perhaps this is a time there's an opportunity now going forwards.
I think there's a huge opportunity to build. One of the straplines we use all the time is there's never been a better time to build a better practice. Now is the time to be making changes before you go back to the way it all used to be.
Brilliant. Okay, well, that's a good point to close on, I think. So thank you very much, Andy. And if anyone wants to contact you, they can do that on the platform and there, call pbandy.uk. Brilliant. Thank you very much. And we look forward to seeing everyone again on this platform in the future, because we're going to do more on here, and also obviously at the event when we can meet all again in January. So yeah, brilliant. Thank you very much.
My pleasure. See you all again.
Cheers. Bye.